All right, so I guess we'll just start off by introducing ourselves because this is a shared presentation today. So I am Rachel Skubel. I am the Awareness and Appreciation Coordinator here at the Coral Reef Conservation Program. So that means I focus on a lot of our education, outreach, things of that sort. So I'm very happy to be sharing more education outreach with you all today, chatting about more of a technical side of things, if you will, about the policies that we have and how we kind of enact them and things that you can do to help us protect Florida's coral reef.
And I'm Tyler Mominey. I'm the Associate Coordinator here at DEP's Coral Reef Conservation Program. I handle more of the citizen science side, also partner with Rachel on a lot of the outreach and education, and run some of that as well. So I'll be diving into our Southeast Florida Action Network and how you can be involved and make you all citizen science.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna turn off my webcam now and I will proceed. All right, here we go. So, right, so we have one more class after this one. So if you're curious about identifying the stony corals that we have in our waters here in South Florida, you can come back this Thursday at 6 p.m. and learn what our dominant corals are. And then when you go for a dive, you will be able to name more things that you see. But apart from that, all of these webinars here will be available online at this URL that's at the top. So I will be processing these and uploading them all. So within the next week or so, they should all be available so you can watch, rewatch things to your heart's content and share them around as well. So it's always nice to start off situating ourselves. So this is what you guys have probably seen before is something called Coral City Camera. So we can just take a little peek at what's going on inside Florida's coral reef right now, just to kind of get ourselves situated. So we see here we have some nice corals here that are growing and healthy, still sunny out. We have some fish coming through. So this is right offshore of Miami. This is run by a local NGO, so it's just a great way to look around and see what's going on Florida's coral reef. Seems to be some very happy fish having a little dinner right now, which is always great to see. So today, as I said, we're going to get a little bit more technical. We are going to chat, with an overview about Florida's coral reef and the coral, what coral is that we're kind of working to protect. And then I will go into something called Florida's Coral Reef Protection Act that we use here in Florida and specifically at DEP in our Coral Reef Conservation Program. And I'll go into something that's called our Reef Injury Prevention and Response Program, which is also known as the RIPR program. And that's who kind of carries out this Coral Reef Protection Act. And then Tyler will take over and chat a bit more about SEAFAN. So the DEP Coral Reef Conservation Program, as if you've been to these talks before, you're aware that we manage, the northern third of this reef here. So just from where Biscayne National Park ends up into Martin County, that's our whole area, which is the Kristen Jacobs Coral Reef Ecosystem Conservation Area. And there's also a number of aquatic preserves in this area, which some of our colleagues manage. And then down here is what we would call federal waters. So that's the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. So that is managed by NOAA, which is National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So this section right up here is managed by the state of Florida and a couple little aquatic preserves as well. Sorry, I'm trying to move through. There we go. So the corals that we're working on protecting, and that Northeast third specifically with our office, oops. So when we talk about a coral, we're talking about this living kind of family of coral polyps. And each of those little coral polyps are those animals. and those animals host these wonderful symbiotic algae that photosynthesize. And so these corals are able to get energy from the sun, also from grabbing things from the water. So a very dynamic animal. And when that family of polyps, which is also called a colony, when they die, they leave behind these really hard stony skeletons, which then will form the basis of the reef. So over about 10,000 years for Florida's coral reef, we've had these wonderful coral animals building up this structure. And so that's what we're working on protecting now. So it's not just about those corals, but it's also about the ecosystems and the services that they facilitate and create, which is what we're really focused on. So of course, so this right here is sort of what you would see as a cross section of Florida's coral reef, maybe off of Miami or off of Fort Lauderdale. And so we have a lot of nice little areas here that are very important to fish. We have mangroves that other fish will go to during their life cycle. When they're smaller fish, they'll come back to the reef and they're bigger fish. So the reefs are part of this much bigger ecosystem that we have in South Florida. And now we have them coming back as bigger fish. So it is not just about the fish. So the reefs are also quite essential to humans. So whether you're here for tourism, if you're a business who benefits from tourism, if you're a resident even and you like to explore our waters, there's a lot of different ways that we can benefit from having healthy reefs. And then not to mention the wonderful ways that our reefs are able to protect us when it gets stormy out. So, hurricane season is just around the corner. And when you have a healthy reef that has lots of structure and relief, it's able to provide a first line of defense when you have those storm surges coming in. So it really, really does help us to have a healthy reef so it can, really insulate us from the worst of what would otherwise face us when we have these hurricanes coming through. And again, that's not just, talking about human lives and livelihoods, but even our buildings, just the pure fact that we're not going to have as much flooding or destruction. But then going back to the animals, we have an incredible number of animals that call this reef their home. So more than 70 species of sponges, more than 500 species of fish, an incredible diversity of invertebrates, which perhaps you've listened in to one of our wonderful webinars on the fish and invertebrates. And then, of course, more than 40 species of stony corals. So just a little bit more about all of those guys. Sponges, so it's not just something that you can use in the bath, it's actually a really important part of the ecosystem. So we have, as I mentioned, a huge amount of species here, and they actually outnumber our stony corals in density and also in the number of species. So sponges are also important because they provide habitat for fish, of course, and you can see this massive sponge with a lot of fish that could live in there, but they also filter water. So they can take out bacteria, other nutrients. So they're really important to maintaining the water quality of the reef. And then of course we have our octocorals, or our soft corals. So again, more species than hard corals, and they're really valuable to reefs because again, they're a great place for a fish to live. And also, if something happens to those stony corals, you can still have these guys that can come back fairly quickly. So you can kind of get some of the functionality of the reef coming back more quickly than, a stony coral, which takes quite a long time to grow. And then, of course, we have these stony corals, which over thousands of years are going to be building up that really nice, dense structure, which is really what's going to be protecting us from those storms as well. So of those corals, we do have a number that are threatened here in Florida. So let's see here. So the pillar coral on the top left is an incredible, incredible coral, but it's been very vulnerable to a coral disease that we've had come here through since 2014 until now. So we don't have that many of them left. And we have some corals that are on the Endangered Species Act, which I'll talk a bit more about. So that's our staghorn coral, for example, our elkhorn coral as well, and some of these other corals too. And so when a coral is on the Endangered Species Act, that means it gets another source of protection and by way of the federal government, because it has to have a plan essentially for bringing it, back from its listing. And fortunately, the staghorn, the elkhorn coral are not affected very much by this coral disease that we have. So that is always a bright side that we like to look to. All right. And so when we're looking at some specific stressors that are more local to the area, here, as I mentioned, we do have our stony coral tissue loss disease that has been coming in. Sorry, I can't go back. That has been coming in since 2014. And so with that disease, we really see that it has spread throughout the entire reef, and that when it reaches a coral who is susceptible, again, not all species are susceptible, then within a matter of weeks to months, that coral will die unless it gets a treatment. So we have a very effective antibiotic treatment that we're able to apply, and that in most cases will stop the disease. So we've been able to both use that antibiotic treatment as well as go in and rescue key corals and kind of bring them back as a gene bank. And now we're beginning to repropagate corals that were rescued. So we are responding to that disease. And what will become important later too is these recreational diving impacts. So that's if you're out diving on the reef, if you're not very careful, if your flippers are touching it, for example, if you're holding onto a coral, that's definitely something that can happen when we have tourists around here, divers who are just learning how to dive. And then coastal construction. So, it's incredible that our coral reefs are so close to us, particularly in somewhere like Fort Lauderdale. You could just swim to a coral reef, which is truly, truly an incredible thing and very unique to South Florida. But that being said, when a construction project is going on the coast, there's a lot of different checks and balances that they tend to have to go through to make sure that they are containing the impacts of their construction. So that's something we also have to be mindful of. And vessel anchoring, or here we have a grounding. So that's if a vessel, whether it's recreational or commercial, is dropping anchor on a reef. So I'll go into that a little bit more soon. Of course, we have invasive species, which aren't great for the fish. And then all of these things are kind of exacerbated by the fact that we have quite a dense population here. So just purely the more people that are in a place, the more chances you have for any sort of human interaction that is harmful to reefs to occur. So I just want to dive a little bit more into those impacts that we chatted about here. So before 2006, it was more FWC, or the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, who was working on these vessel groundings, or these anchor damage incidents that would happen to coral reefs. But then in 2006, Florida DEP took over, and it was truly just in time, perhaps not a coincidence, because there were all of these really major incidents that were happening from 1994 to 2009 over that 15-16 year period. So we needed someone who was able to really just be handling these incidents full time. So all of these dots here are individual incidents of vessel groundings. And so what happened was, so in this dotted yellow area you see here, that was the old Port Everglades Anchorage. And then, considering all these groundings, it was moved to this new blue polygon here. So that was definitely a step in the right direction. And that was in 2008 that happened. And then actually the Port of Miami is reconfiguring it as it was reconfigured as well. So that was in July of 2017. So we're seeing some similar things happening down in Miami. And so this, within Florida DEP, when we started responding to these things, it was coincided with the Florida's Coral Reef Protection Act, or the CRPA, and the creation of this Reef Injury Prevention and Response Program. So we have these flyers that if you've been around to any of our outreach events, you may have seen. And so what is this Florida's Coral Reef Protection Act? So it's just generally the goal is to reduce these coral reef impacts that were being seen with just having more of a legal authority. And so you can find that in the Florida statute. Let me know and I can send it to you if you'd like to read it more. And so it essentially just makes it illegal to anchor on or otherwise damage coral reefs that are in state waters. And by state waters, we mean Florida state waters. And state waters, if you're unfamiliar, are up to 3 miles offshore. And so more than 3 miles offshore, you get into federal waters. And the CRPA gives DEP the legal authority to enforce those violations. So we are very much tied to the CRPA. So again, if you want to look at that act for yourself, here's a wonderful QR code that will take you right to the Florida Administrative Code. So essentially, the way that this is carried out is that the DEP kind of will chat with someone who is found to have, had one of these really major incidents on the reef, and we call them the responsible party. But we really try to focus rather more on, the enforcement side of things. We really try to focus on having education. So we've done quite a bit of outreach with communities, so boating communities, fishing communities, and even if, for a first-time recreational impact, for a small amount of damage, we'll just, go with the educational route. So, just chatting with them, sharing our materials that we have, and really making sure that, we're just educating instead of, necessarily enforcing. And so again, this is administered by this broader program. So they don't just work with the CRPA. The Reef Injury Prevention and Response Program has a much broader set of responsibilities. So as I mentioned, they work a lot on education and outreach to really prevent these things from happening in the first place. And so that QR code would take you to our website that we've developed for RIPR. And yes, so they not only are coordinating and responding to these groundings, anchoring, sinking vessel incidents, and so forth that are happening on these reefs, but they're also working to respond from an ecosystem level. So if something major has happened, then this program is actually able to work on restoring the reefs to where they were. So when we hear about an incident that has happened, this is the sort of thing that the program would go out and look at. So we might see signs of injury from things like transferred bottom paint. So you can see that we had this little like blue here on the coral, some scraping that might have happened from a boat. These are sponges that have been sheared off. That's probably by an anchor chain. We have some fractured corals. We have some buried corals. So there's a couple different signs you can look to see just the extent that something's been damaged. So again, here, this is probably something that's from anchoring. So this sponge has just kind of been sheared off. So a lot of times the anchor chain can do much more damage than the anchor itself. And of course, grounding is a bit more dramatic sometimes. But yeah, it can happen right over a reef, which is not great for the reef itself. And again, this is another example. So it grounded, but below the water, if you will. And so, as I mentioned, it's not just, finding these incidents and detecting them, but it's also working to restore those reefs. So what we see here is, after we've had this incident, it's been a little while, but then this is still in progress, but they are working to restore the structure. So by very strategically placing this structure here, then these are all things that corals can colonize. And then we will go back and monitor, how these corals are progressing over time and that restored site. But yes, anchoring is far and away the most common incident that the RIPR program will deal with. Although these other incidents do occur, this is definitely by far the most common. And so what I find really interesting is the way that these incidents can kind of be detected and particularly through something called the AIS tracker, so the automatic identification system. So those of you who have boats or vessels, you might be familiar with these things. So of course, also, and I'll go into the AIS stuff a little bit more, but these can also be detected just by people who are out in the water. So Tyler will go into this SEAFAN side of things. Also the Coast Guard, if they see some reef damage, they might let us know. So we work with a lot of partners on this. But so this is the AIS tracking. So essentially every ship will give off this a satellite signal. If it's of a certain size, it will have to have this AIS tracker essentially. So then we know this is a sensitive area, so we know this is a reef area. So if a vessel's AIS signal is in here for a prolonged amount of time, so not just if it's in here, but if it's here long enough for us to suspect that it has anchored or grounded, then we will get a notification and we'll just, make a plan to go out and do that kind of site check and look for those signs that I showed you in those past slides. So things like paint, shearing, fractured corals, which be like, hey, there might have been some damage just because this boat was in this known sensitive area. But yeah, so you can look at AIS data for free on a lot of websites, so you can see that there's always a ton of boats, especially around Florida. But yeah, if we zoom in a little bit more on having those precise locations, something like this is really just going to tell you that their anchor was probably here, and then the boat was just swinging all around. So you can see where that chain probably was. But this whole area, if this were a reef, which it is, that could all have been impacted by the anchor chain, unfortunately. There's a lot of little tips and things that you can see from looking at those satellite data, which is very helpful. So yeah, so as I mentioned, you can really try to design your anchorages once you know where the reefs are and you know the behavior of boats. So since we know that there has been a long occurrence of anchoring on reefs really before we knew that these reefs were here, now that we know these things, it can be easier to design design anchorages that are more reef friendly. Right. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tyler.
Awesome, thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, and but before I do, if there's any questions. Katie can't see the bottom of the screen. Tyler, did you have that issue?
I am not having that issue.
Okay. Katie, I hope that you're able to minimize it and then re-maximize it. That might help. But otherwise, if any folks have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the question and answer. Sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. And then you can also raise your hand, and we'll come back for questions at the end as well. All right, so here I will just give that control to you. Okay.
Awesome, thanks, Rachel. So the southeast. Ooh.
Sorry.
You're good. You want to go back one, Rachel?
Sure. Yeah.
There you go. So Southeast Florida Action Network, or SEAFAN for short, it's a community-based reporting and response mechanism for marine incidents affecting Southeast Florida's coral reef system. As Rachel kind of mentioned earlier, DEP CRCP is responsible for managing over 100 miles of coral reef. We have a staff of about 15 people, which is one of the reasons why we're empowering you here today and really every day to get out there and see what there is to see and report it back to us. Because as much as we would love to be on the water every single day, it's just physically impossible. And we just want to know what's happening out there. So we would love to have all of you guys responding to us and reporting what you see out there. Again, we just want to keep our reefs as healthy and beautiful here in Southeast Florida as possible. And that could be really through the help of you all. So for the program goals for SEAFAN, we have enhancing marine debris cleanup efforts. So for this, we're actually marking these spots, and we can kind of go historically and to the archive and check what is going on. Where are we seeing a lot of marine debris come up via SEAFAN? And we actually have coming up feels pretty soon, usually in August, July, our annual marine debris cleanup reef events, which actually we partner with dive shops, and we'll go out there, use these marked debris cleanups, or debris incidents, and we will go out and clean them up. So this is one of the program goals. Next up, we have increased response to the vessel groundings, kind of like Rachel was talking about earlier, in coral damage. These can be while you're out on the water and you see maybe a vessel's getting a little too close. We actually just had a SEAFAN report last week of a vessel getting a little too close and possibly grounding or causing some anchor damage. And we can go out there and assess the situation and decide if there's any issue and pursue legal action if we deem that necessary. Next up, we have early detection of potentially harmful biological disturbances. So again, that's anything you kind of see out there in the environment that just seems a little odd. Maybe it's discolored water or algal blooms, anything like that. And yep, keep moving forward. There we go. And again, just like Rachel said, SEAFAN covers the entirety of the Chris and Jacobs Coral ECA, which is inclusive of Martin County, Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties. And you can see that by our nice little map there. Next up, we have our response coordination. So different incidents have different responders, and we're grateful to have all of our partners that work with us throughout all of these counties. And you can actually see, on the right, or I'm sorry, on your left, if you're looking at the screen, is a treated coral. We actually had a SEAFAN report of some corals that were here in Broward County actually that had stony coral tissue loss disease. That came in as a SEAFAN report. We reported it out to Nova Southeastern University, who are one of our partners here, and they sent out a strike team to actually locate, tag, and treat the colony, and has since forth stopped the lesion from progressing, as you can see on your left-hand side picture. So again, this is an umbrella program, and we're working with many different programs, even inside of our own agency. So we have a marine debris reporting and removal program, which is another program that I run as well. The reef injury prevention and response program, which Rachel just went over, and our Bleach Watch program as well. Bleach Watch is another citizen science program, and it covers coral disease and bleaching. What that is a 2-hour training session. So instead of SEAFAN itself, it's a little bit more involved at the species level detection. And after that training, you're able to go out and correctly identify coral disease and coral bleaching and send in those reports, which are highly valuable as well. Moving forward. There we go. So we're going to move forward into what SEAFAN.net, which is kind of our homepage, looks like. So SEAFAN.net will take you to all the information that you can see what we do, why we do it, how you can get involved. You can see our SEAFAN. If you click on that link right there, we'll take you to our reporting form. And if you call the hotline, we also will be able to respond that way. As you can see with that blue box. Moving forward, we actually just redesigned the actual report form. That is now a short code, so it's SEAFAN.net/report. You can hold your phones up now and scan that QR code, so you have that saved in your phone if you're ever out on the water and you see something odd. It'll take you right to this page. It'll look just like this, and we're going to go through that form a little bit right now. So the SEAFAN online reporting form, you can see that first box is a site information. So we want to know what type of incident you observed, what date was observed, the site name, or maybe a description of it. For example, if you said Lauderdale by the Sea, maybe half a mile out, you were diving. We can kind of track that down, as well as the county. And then you're going to see this find your coordinates. You can see that little home button if you look on your right hand side. That will actually take you home, and right under that there's almost like a bullseye looking thing that'll track your current location. If you just don't have your latitude and longitude and you don't want to put it in, it'll just pull up, it'll ask you permission if you want to share the current location that you're at, and it'll record that. So nice and easy. That's your first section. Next up, we have, for example, let's say we were reporting this area will change dependent on what incident you click. So for example, let's say we were out there, we saw some anchor damage. First question you're going to get is what type of resources were impacted. So that could be coral, seagrass, mangrove, sponges, hard bottom, maybe you don't know, or other. And you can check as many or as little apply. After that, we have the name of the vessel. If you know the name of the vessel, most importantly is the registration number. So that registration number is that FL number, some people refer to it as, and that actually helps us even more as we can track down who the vessel owner is, what agency maybe is running that vessel, and we can just gather some more information, and if deemed necessary, we can go ahead and pursue legal action. And that last question under anchor damage and vessel grounding is any additional vessel information, any other notes that you want to put in there. Again, more information is good. It helps us respond to these incidents. Next up, in last kind of part of the form, you'll see observer information. We're going to ask for pictures. Pictures are always helpful, especially if they're sharp, in focus, and if you're underwater, white balanced. These just furthermore help us with understanding what incident happened, what's going on out there. And if you have pictures, you can actually report up to 10 here, but if you have more, maybe we'll reach back out to you, or if you forget, we might also read back out to you just for some more information or for the pictures. First name, last name, email, and phone number is optional. Now, we are going to quiz you. And let's say we all went on to a dive trip. Today, surprise, we're doing virtual diving. And we saw this picture here on your right. So I'm going to run a poll right now, and we're going to try to guess what we saw and how we would report it to SEAFAN. Go ahead and answer. What marine incident was in that picture? Get a couple more, 30 seconds here. All right. So we have this answer was coral bleaching. So if you answered coral bleaching, you were correct. Seems like most people, actually all people answered coral bleaching if you responded to it. So you would be correct. This would be reported as coral bleaching. And again, if you are interested in learning more about coral bleaching and coral disease, I highly encourage you to take a Bleach Watch class run by yours truly or some of our other wonderful coral experts with our Bleach Watch instructor network. Another question for you. I know you probably didn't think you were getting quizzed today. Oh well, we have another picture for you. So what incident is this? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it, and then I'm going to launch another poll for you. So is it marine debris, coral disease, anchor damage, coral bleaching, or vessel grounding? Give you all about 30 more seconds here. All right, get those final answers in. And this one was coral disease. So if you answered coral disease, about 70% of you did coral disease. Just a kind of quick little thing there. One of the better ways to spot is if there's a clear lesion pattern and or there is some algal growth, and you can actually see that skeleton underneath. So this specific example, I believe, was stony coral tissue loss disease, which completely takes off the tissue, and you can see that skeleton right away. Two more for you. So next up, which marine incident is in this picture? This one should be pretty easy. About 10 more seconds here. All right, so all you got this one correct. This one was vessel grounding. And as you can see, it's a vessel underwater. This is kind of your worst case scenario. But as you can imagine, this causes a lot of debris, and this is something we want to know about. Next up, last one, I promise, is what marine incident is in this picture? And I'll give you a hint if you're paying attention to Rachel's earlier points and what she was talking about. You should get this one right away. I see this might have been a trick question, so I'll give it to you anyway. This one was actually anchor damage, and it was my mistake that I didn't put it on the poll. So you all got it right, A for effort. So anchor damage, we actually had an anchor come down onto this coral colony and crush it just like this. This is a worst case scenario. Sometimes we'll see things such as scraping or maybe even some anchor chain scraping as well. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off back to Rachel to talk to you about how you can protect Florida's coral reef.
Thanks, Tyler. So yeah, we're just going to chat about some more, some relevant ways to what we're chatting about today that you can help protect Florida's coral reef. So first of all, I guess I'd love to know how many of you guys are boaters. So how many of you guys like own a boat or generally tend to go out with friends and stuff. You can just like raise your hand in the chat. All right, so maybe not a lot. Oh, yeah, we do have a number of people. Awesome. And then if you had a question as well, please keep your hand raised. Otherwise, you can put your hand down. But yeah, so you probably already know that it's really important to anchor correctly. So we have some guidelines based on our resources that could help you. So we have something that we have worked on updating. So it's formerly known as the Southeast Florida Coral Reef Locator Map, but is now known as Florida's Coral Reef Locator Map. And that is available on the DEP website. And we will be able to share that information very soon with you all, but we've been working hard to update that. So this is an app that you can use as well as just a standard nautical map, or probably your GIS unit or GPS unit, to see where the sand is. So you can see where the reef is relative to your boat, but you can also see where the sand is, and you can see where the seagrass is. So you want to really try to find a place based on all that technology or just maps where it's sand kind of like surrounded by sand. So sand right next to coral is generally not great because, as you maybe saw on that earlier graphic, if you put your anchor in the sand, your boat is not necessarily going to stay in that position. So it can then, swing around, and then your anchor is potentially swinging on top of the reef. So sand next to sand, not close to coral, is really ideal. And it's, as we say here, it's a win-win because sand is pretty much the best thing for your anchor to be holding on to. So you're, of course, just gently putting the anchor in and just really giving yourself enough line depending on the weather conditions. So sometimes, people like to do like 7 to 1. So however deep it is, you put out 7 times that much length. And then when you're picking up the anchor, that's also a really important thing. So you kind of want to slowly be moving your boat towards the anchor, and then someone is just, really gently pulling it in and putting it maybe neatly into the boat, maybe coiling it very nicely. But really, you hopefully not, yanking the anchor up, or not just like going right over it and just, just really pulling it. So sometimes, if the anchor is really stuck, and if it's possible, you can even have someone, snorkel in really quickly, and you maybe see what's going on. So just really aiming not to really pull something up, because, it may have moved, it may be anchored in something a bit more delicate now. So just really be mindful when you're anchoring, and also when you're pulling up. And another alternative to anchors is our wonderful network of free public mooring buoys. So this is a QR code that can, take you to a list of those, but this is also on our website. So we have a ton of these all throughout the Kristen Jacobs Coral Reef Ecosystem Conservation Area, as well as down through Biscayne National Park, through the Florida Keys. There's really a lot of these mooring buoys. And so the advantage of these guys is that you don't need to anchor. So you can just find one of these, and they're always very conveniently located at really nice diving or fishing spots. So you can even just, plan to visit some mooring buoys, and chances are that you're going to have a good day in or on the water. So, as you're coming up from one of these, like, again, if it's a calm day, it's a lot easier than if it's a wavy day, but you want to have, this designated person who's ready to really to grab that line coming off the mooring buoy. And, as those of you who are boaters know that there's a good way to do that. Picking up that line, and then you're tying your line through that line. So your bow line goes through the mooring buoy line. So sometimes people will, directly pick up that line and anchor it to and put it on their cleat, sorry. So you want to, avoid doing that. And the proper way to do that is, putting your line through there. And again, remembering if it's rougher weather to pick that, give yourself enough line if it's really wavy out there. But yeah, never tying your boat directly with the line coming off the mooring buoy. So as I mentioned, we have this this app that we use, and when I say it's an app, it's something that's available on an app. So, and there also is a desktop version, which this QR code should take you to. But if you're on the water, chances are you don't have your desktop computer with you or your laptop with you. So you can use this really handy app called ArcGIS Field Maps. So it's you can get it on your phone, it's free, and then you can just look for Florida's Coral Reef Locator, and it'll be right there. And then you can see, you know, just like a fancy GPS unit where you are with respect to the reef thing. So this is what it would look like on your phone. It's also what it looks like on your computer, but you know, your phone is probably what is going to be most useful for you. So yeah, you can. It'll also help you, find points of interest, so you can see where our mooring buoys are, and not just ours, but also some that are down in the Florida Keys too. So really useful app. I've used it to kind of find dive spots, or to tell people where to visit the reef. So I think it's a really great one to use. Yeah, so very good resolution. You can also see where the seagrass is. So we're not just trying to avoid anchoring on corals, we're also really trying to avoid anchoring on seagrass because it's also delicate. Excuse me. And then the last, one of the last things we'll mention is the clean boating program. So if you are involved in running a marina, if you have your own boat, we DEP, and so this isn't the Coral Reef Conservation who runs this, but another program in DEP is a clean boating program. So that is run as kind of like a partnership. So folks from DEP will work with the marina. You can work with vessels as well to make sure that you're kind of checking various boxes that make sure that your vessel or your marina is as environmentally friendly as it can be. And so Octavio, who is in the Miami office with us, is the person who oversees that program. So you can always look on our website or just reach out to Octavio for more information about that. But it is a really great program. It's kind of a win-win for marinas, boaters, and for just folks who use the water and the environment, of course. And lastly, we have this website, which should finally be relaunched next week. So we'll have a ton more resources there that you can read and look at. We'll be really trying to post recent news and opportunities to get involved on FloridaCoralReef.org as well. So of course, lastly, have fun, because the reef is there for us to enjoy. So it's it's great if we can take care of it, but we're taking care of it for a reason, and it's one of those reasons is so we can continue to enjoy it. So it's best if you can get out there and do that. So with that, do you all have any questions for us? You can raise your hand. I see some raised hands here, or you can put a question in the Q&A. So I will, folks who have put their hand up, Tyler, do you want to find them and unmute them?
Yes.
Let's see. Okay, thanks. Yeah, my screen's being a little wonky. And one of them is now offline.
So let's see. All right, first up, Fallon, if you would like to go ahead and ask your question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. You should be able to.
It may have been just about the, you said you might have had a technical issue, but otherwise, please.
Let's do this instead. Okay. Everyone is unmuted, so Fallon, if you're comfortable, you can go ahead. Can't hear you, Fallon.
And if you're having trouble, you can also type your question in the question area. I know sometimes there's a lot of audio inputs to choose from. But yeah, in the meantime, if other folks have questions, ideas, things you want to learn more about, you can either email us, so our emails are at the bottom, or a really great one to remember is coral@floridadep.gov. So that also goes to us. So that's a really easy email to pass on or to send some questions to. Coral@floridadep.gov.
There you go. And I got Fallon's question in the chat box.
Okay.
Sorry
in
about that,
Southwest.
Fallon.
Yeah.
Yeah, what if you're in Southwest Florida?
Is there a citizen reporting area there, Tyler?
So I'm thinking right now, for Southwest Florida, the only one I know of currently that's a little bit different in how we run our programs is MOAT's Beach Conditions and Response System, BCRS, or visitbeaches.org. That's their short code. That'll take you right to you. They do a lot of beach conditions, red tide and stuff like that. And they're great over there. I know a couple of people who run that program. That's the only thing I can think of that's similar. You're also welcome to report to SEAFAN, and I can get in the hands of the correct people to respond.
Yes, yeah, we work with a lot of partners, so if it's not something that's within our power to respond to, we really do our best to get it to others. Yes, so thank you for that question. Yeah, and I guess one other thing that I'll mention before we sign off is that there's recently been more of a desire to get reports on diadema or sea urchins. So if you're out there, just pay special attention to this, the sea urchins that you see, because we just want to keep an eye on them. So, really do send us reports if you see if they're healthy, if they're not doing well. We really would love to get reports to SEAFAN just about the sea urchins in general.
All right, looks like we have no other questions.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is it. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming on. And then again, like this Thursday will be our last webinar at 6 p.m. You can learn more about identifying corals. But have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.